In November of 1910, a private railcar sat waiting in Hoboken, New Jersey with its curtains drawn. The men boarding it had been given instructions: arrive one at a time, do not travel together, and use only first names in front of the staff. Among them were a United States senator and men representing the most powerful banking houses in the world. Their destination was a private island off the coast of Georgia. They stayed for over a week. They told no one. And the document they drafted in that clubhouse became, after years of political fighting and revision, the Federal Reserve System. This is not a conspiracy theory. The participants eventually wrote about it themselves. To understand why grown men needed fake names, you have to understand what American banking was like before this. And the word for it is chaos. The United States had no central bank. It had thousands of individual banks, many issuing their own notes, with no unified backstop. And this produced a pattern so regular that people simply expected it. The panic. A rumor spreads that a bank is in trouble. Depositors rush to withdraw. No bank holds enough cash to pay everyone at once because banking works by lending most deposits out. So a healthy bank and a doomed bank look identical the moment the line forms outside. The panic spreads bank to bank, city to city, and the whole system sees it. This happened again and again through the 1800s. Then came 1907, and it nearly ended everything. The Panic of 1907 begins with a failed attempt to corner the stock of a copper company. The scheme collapses, and the collapse contaminates the banks connected to the men who tried it. Depositors run. The contagion jumps to the trust companies of New York, and one of the largest, the Knickerbocker Trust, is overwhelmed and suspends payment. Terror spreads. Lines form all over Manhattan. The stock exchange comes within hours of shutting down for lack of money to trade with. And here's the detail that changed everything. The man who stopped it was not the government. It was J.P. Morgan, 70 years old, semi-retired, and effectively acting as a one-man central bank. He summoned the city's financiers into his private library, had bankers examine the books of struggling institutions overnight to determine which could be saved, assembled pools of money to prop up the survivors, and, as the story is told, kept the men in that room until they signed on. It worked. The panic broke. And that is precisely what terrified official Washington. Not that the rescue failed, that it succeeded. The stability of the entire American economy had depended on the personal judgment, personal wealth, and personal willingness of one elderly private banker. If Morgan had been dead, or unwilling, or wrong, there was no backup. A nation of 90 million people had no mechanism of its own, so Congress created a commission to figure out what to do, chaired by Senator Nelson Aldrich. And Aldrich, after touring Europe's central banks, concluded America needed something similar. But he had a problem that was political rather than financial. The American public loathed Wall Street. Any plan that looked like it was written by big New York banks would be destroyed in Congress on sight. And any plan that ignored those banks would be unworkable because they were the only people who understood the machinery. Hence the island. Aldrich needed the bankers' expertise without the bankers' fingerprints. So the invitation went out as a duck hunting trip. The men used first names only. The story goes that they later joked about being the first name club. They took a private car with the shades down, and they spent roughly a week and a half at the Jekyll Island Club arguing over the design of an American central bank. What did they actually build? They tried to solve the run. Their answer was an institution that could act as a lender of last resort, a body with the power to supply cash to solvent banks under stress, so that a rumor could not kill an institution that was fundamentally sound. They also knew Americans distrusted concentrated financial power, so instead of one central bank in New York, the structure was regional, spread across the country with a coordinating board. The plan they carried home was rejected. It was too obviously the Aldrich plan, too obviously bank-flavored, and it died. But it was reworked, fought over, amended by people with very different politics, and in December 1913, the Federal Reserve Act was signed into law. The result was not what the Jekyll Island group wrote. It was unmistakably a descendant of it. And the secrecy held for years. Participants denied it, deflected it, kept quiet, until eventually some of them wrote memoirs and articles describing the trip in detail, including the false names and the shaded windows. The secret meeting is not a theory. It is admitted history. What people argue about is what it means. So what should you take from this? Not that the Fed is a conspiracy. The reasoning behind it is public, debated in Congress for years, and the institution is one of the most scrutinized on Earth. Take something more useful and more uncomfortable. The system that governs the money in your pocket, the interest on your mortgage, the rate on your savings, the value of every dollar you will ever earn. was not designed in the open by the public. Its founding draft was written by a small group of the most interested parties alive on a private island under fake names, because they knew that if ordinary people saw who was holding the pen, the plan would never survive. The rules of money are always written by someone. The only real question is whether you know who. Follow Finance Zorix. We decode the machine.